Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well amidst this really crappy situation. I hope that you're spending some time outdoors in order to get some fresh air, maybe making some discoveries around your house. But I also hope that you are practicing proper social distancing. Speaking of social distancing, I've been doing a lot of running. I should mention that I absolutely despise running. I'm not very fast. It takes me a long time to get the distance that I want to go. I'm running about 3 miles, and this hill right here is almost at the end of my run. And by the point that I get to it, I am moving at a turtle's pace. The other day, I happened to notice that on the trail, an animal had left something right where I was trying to run. And because I was moving at a turtle's pace, I didn't step in it. I just happened to notice it. And my noticing got me wondering, why would an organism do that right in the middle of the trail that I'm trying to run? Many of you know that I really enjoy taking photographs of animals. One of the things that I use in order to photograph animals are a number of covert scouting cameras. These are cellular capable. They've been a really great resource in the classroom. I've used them on most of the images with a lot of inquiry type activities with students where I can just throw out a bunch of images that have data associated with them, time of day that the image was taken, temperature, moon phase, various data points that my kids can analyze. The other cool thing about it is that these cameras will send me images in real time. Covert has their own app that pushes out all of from each one of the cameras, all of the images that are taken at that camera. So like, for example, in the last few minutes, I've gotten a picture of the neighbor's house cat at my house. This camera's set up just right in my backyard. This is actually a camera that we've been getting quite a few bobcat pictures in, and it's literally out my backyard like 30 feet. So that's been kind of a cool thing. It's a way for me to kind of track some of the different organisms that are frequenting the area in which I live. So going back to our really crappy situation. We're all confined. We're kind of getting stir crazy. Did you know you don't need a cellular camera or a trail camera in order to identify the specific organisms that might exist in your area? We can use animal waste as an indicator of the specific species that live around our neighborhoods. So no matter whether you call it crap, feces, defecation, manure, dung, poop, excrement, stool, fecal matter, waste, it's really important to recognize that you should not ever handle animal scat. And we're going to see in this video why. One of the organisms that might be frequenting your area is a badger. Badger scat varies in size. It's oftentimes full of moisture. Its texture is dependent upon its diet. Its diet does include things like worms and berries, depending upon the time of the year. Oftentimes the indicator of badger scat is that they will dig a latrine and they will deposit their waste in the latrine. So you can see in this image where there was a hole that was dug and then the organism deposited its scat there. It does have a musky, sweet odor to it. So if you're walking through the woods and you notice something that smells funny, has a musky odor to it, maybe take a look around. You may have a badger in your area. Coyote scat. Coyote scat varies in size. It is tubular in shape with tapered ends. Oftentimes it has a twisted or rope-like appearance to it. Coyotes leave scat as a means of communication, not only to let me, as the runner, know that he frequents the area, but also to let other coyotes know that this area is occupied. Oftentimes, coyote scat will contain lots of fur and bone fragments, especially during the winter months when they're predominantly preying on things like rabbits. During the summer months, they may contain plant, berry, and seed fragments also. Raccoons. Raccoon feces is 4.5 to 6.5 centimeters in length. Oftentimes it is segmented. It has a tube shape to it, but it usually is deposited in large piles. Raccoons tend to allow their waste to pile up because they use the same latrine over and over and over and over again. Latrines may occur at the base of trees or at the forks of a tree, or also maybe even on top of any fallen tree. The color ranges from black to red depending upon the season and the diet that they have. Oftentimes it's granular looking and it will break easy if disturbed, but again, as a reminder, do not disturb animal feces with your hand. The important part to that is that especially raccoons, their feces can contain parasitic roundworms and the eggs of the roundworm, which can cause health concerns in people. Bats. Bats typically roost together in large concentrations. Right below their area of roosting, they leave their fecal material. Oftentimes it has chewed up bits of insects in it. It has a rough appearance. It's usually very small in size, no more than 1/2 centimeter in length. Otters. Otters have a specific name that we associate with their scat. It's called a spraint. Oftentimes they leave it in prominent areas as a means of marking their territory. It can be 3 to 10 centimeters in length. Oftentimes it has a greenish color to it. When it is first deposited, it is often slimy and full of fish bones, scales, crayfish parts, or shell fragments, depending upon what their last meal was. It can have a musky smell to it or the smell of fish, and many people report it smelling a little bit like jasmine tea. Mink. Mink scat is very similar to that of the otter. It's just slightly smaller. It's black or dark in color. It oftentimes contains fur, feather, or bone fragments, and it has a strong, unpleasant odor. Rabbits. Rabbits have more of a spherical feces, approximately 1 centimeter in size. It can be black, brown, or green in color, again dependent upon their diet. Oftentimes it's filled with plant and grass species remains. They do typically have latrines as well that are near their burrow entrances. So oftentimes if you're noticing rabbit burrows, maybe take a look around and you'll notice there's scat left behind as well. Rabbits and hares eat their own excrement. These are called lagomorphs. The reason being is that cellulose of plants is really hard to digest, and so these organisms will go through this process called refection, where they digest it a second time in order to get extra nutritional value out of the waste. White-tailed deer, 1 to 1.5 centimeters in length. There's no obvious contents inside of the feces of white-tailed deer. This is because deer regurgitate and then chew their food a second time before digestion. This is called rumination. So they're going to actually vomit it up, rechew it, and that's going to cause it to have a smooth, shiny, dark pellet when that fecal material exits the body. Oftentimes they're stuck together in clusters with one end being slightly pointy. So we can see in the image to the right some deer fecal material. This was actually left right behind my house as well, and so I took a couple of pictures and added them to this presentation. Bobcat. You can see some of the pictures that we've been getting just in my backyard of bobcats. Bobcat scat is between 6 and 11 centimeters long, varying from 1.5 to 2.5 centimeters in diameter. It is long and tubular. Oftentimes they're hard and compressed. They will have bones and hair present, again, dependent upon the diet of the animal. At times, there may be berries or grass fragments as well. Oftentimes, bobcats will deposit their scat in an area that they've scratched bare, and then they will recover it with grass or other plant matter or even dirt. They do typically defecate in the middle of trails or trail intersections to mark territory also. Possum. Possum scat averages 2 centimeters in diameter. Its sides are smooth and it has at least one end that is tapered, and it tends to be more curvy versus straight. Fox. It's important to recognize there are 2 phases of fox, the gray fox and the red fox where we live. Their scat is between 5 and 20 centimeters in length. Oftentimes they look very similar to that of dog. Normally it has a twisted shape to it, pointed at one end. Usually they are full of fur, feathers, bones, seeds, and even berries. When fox live in a rural area, their waist is oftentimes dark in color. Urban fox tend to have a lighter color because oftentimes they are scavenging on the waste left from humans in our garbage cans. Fresh droppings often have a musky odor to them, and they are also left as a means of marking territory. Pheasants. Pheasant scat is approximately 2 centimeters in length. It's tubular. It is usually one solid mass, a gray to a green color, and it's also coated in white uric acid. Because birds have just a single vent, uric acid is also with their waste that they deposit. Muskrats. Muskrat's waist is 1.7 to 2 centimeters in length. Oftentimes the indication that it is muskrat waist is that it is found near a wetland habitat. It is oval and rounded at both ends. It can have a putty-like texture, but again, don't touch animals' scat. Oftentimes it's deposited in scattered groups. Goose waist. Approximately 8 centimeters in length, often thick, cylindrical, and or coiled. It is made up of digested grass. Again, birds have just one single vent, so there's usually white uric acid that is associated with the waste that is left behind, and it's usually found in grass or on paths near rivers or ponds. Turkeys, approximately 8 centimeters in length, small and cylinder shaped. Female droppings are coiled. Male droppings are elongated or form a J shape. Oftentimes it has white uric acid on it as well. So if we're looking at this image up here, or these 2 images up here, this would be female hen scat, and this over here would be a Jake or a Tom. Owl pellets are slightly different. Their size is dependent upon species. Owls tend to regurgitate parts of their food that they're unable to digest. And so there may be something that looks similar to scat from like a coyote because there's a whole bunch of hair or feathers in it, but instead of it being elongated or tubular, it's a bunch of smaller kind of rounded objects. This is most likely some form of owl pellet where it's regurgitated the parts that it was unable to digest. Oftentimes there are pieces of bone or hair from the small mammals or birds that they've eaten. They typically lack any odor. They're typically dried out pretty quickly, and when they dry out they turn gray in color. So this is a wide variety of the different types of scat or animal waste you might find in your area. Get outside, do some exploration, see if you can identify what species might be prominent in your location based on the waste that they leave behind. Make sure to check trails first because many species will leave trails as an indicator that they live there.